Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Magic Hour. I'm your host, Majid and Dairy, aka Magic Leb. Please check out my YouTube page at Majid and Dairy or my Instagram at Fame Film Agency. Today, my returning guest, Senor Stasi. How are you
Hey, how's it
doing?
going?
And today is Stasi's birthday. How old are you turning?
I'm turning 26.
Oh, yeah, Akbar like me. That's in Arabic means hope you live to 100. Happy birthday, brother.
Thank you.
Even on his birthday, he's agreed to come here on this podcast. He chose this day because we know that we have a lot of important issues to discuss. And the fact that you would sacrifice part of your birthday to be here means very much to me. And I feel like I should pay you with something. So
Maybe a coffee
I
afterwards.
will definitely, I'll give you 2 coffees afterwards and a cake. Okay. So I guess the first thing I want to discuss is the Australian elections. It's over. Albanese came out to be victorious, and poor Dutton, I think, has ruined himself by promising ridiculous things that he definitely couldn't deliver. I think he did that to himself.
I don't know. Maybe he could have delivered them, and that's probably why people didn't like him.
You reckon? You reckon he could have delivered some half the stuff that he said? Like he wants to spend $35 million to rebuild a.
No, but he could have gotten rid of work from home. He could have fired a lot of public servants. He could have made the Australian standard of living worse in that way. That's pretty possible. And
Well-
that's why people voted against him.
Okay, well, fair enough. I know I didn't vote for him. Now Albanese won. What can be expected now for another term with Albanese? What do you think? Is it better for Australia? Is it worse, or are they just going to stay exactly the same for the next 4 years?
I think Albanese's win is a big win for the establishment. He's the guy that Australia's ruling class trusts to keep the country together in a bit of a volatile period. Also, that people sort of prefer when push comes to shove over Dutton and some of the other people out there as well. But it doesn't always mean that they're right. Albanese is just as complicit in what's happening in Gaza and the impoverishment of a lot of Australians as a lot of other political leaders.
Yeah.
I think he's shortchanged the Labor movement and presiding over continued decrease in Australian standard of living, but he's promised a couple of half decent things that people were excited enough for and people were willing to trust him in for. So that's why he's the Prime Minister again.
Okay. Do you think we'll have a good 4 years?
I don't know. I think it depends how hard the Senate stands up to him, because it's the only area where he'll face any real scrutiny.
It is always hard to tell. You can never really tell. I mean, like the campaign trail and everything like that. People have hopes and dreams of what could be, and when it finally comes that they decide a winner, it's like it does a complete 180. Sometimes, like, hey, you said you're gonna do this, and you didn't follow through on that, and what's gonna happen to us now? And
I mean, look, that's just what happens in an election campaign, because you can't. Sometimes it's just a matter of you can't predict the future, so you can't get stuff done. Other times, people do betray their values, and other times things change so much that it's not related to what happened in the past. But I think that there isn't really much in the way of dreams in regards to what happened here. Maybe some hopes. I don't think it's a kind of loveless landslide like we saw in England, but I don't think it's also the kind of exciting energy that we saw happen in Canada, where they did seem to make some promises on real change, especially in regards to Palestine.
okay, well, you were saying some of them abandon their betray their principles, values.
Principles.
Which brings me to the topic about now Trump abandoned or betrayed. He is seen as somebody who abandoned or betrayed Israel / Netanyahu for making deals with Saudi Arabia, with the UAE, and with Qatar, who just gave him a gigantic jumbo jet plane, without the presence of Israel. Now, you have to imagine what you think is going on in Netanyahu's mind right now. And even though Netanyahu said that we are not dependent on USA, which is a complete lie
Yeah.
because they are dependent on USA, and they still want to attack Iran with or without the USA's help. But we get to that later. Let's talk
I'm
about.
not sure if they want to do it without.
No, they can't do it without. This is all talk. I think at this point they just want to show that they can be tough. They want to show the world that they are still in, superior. They're the moral army. You know what I mean? They want to. They're desperately holding on to that reputation.
I think they're trying to maintain escalation dominance over the axis of resistance in the Middle East, of all the people that are doing the work on the ground fighting them, and so they want to prove that they're more savage and more violent than the others.
What's
and
more to
they can
prove?
get
But
away with it.
everybody already knows that. What more are they trying? What more are they proving? But so hey, continue.
But they also want to prove that they can get away with it, they can lie about it, that they'll be accepted for doing such things. And that's where they're beginning to have some issues because Israel's becoming a dirty word.
They tainted it themselves. Nobody tainted it for them. They tainted it themselves. They were welcomed by the Palestinians with hospitality, and they made an agreement to live by their laws at the beginning, and they completely turned around, betrayed them, murdered them, killed them, stole more land and land until this day, and it hasn't stopped since then. So Israel has tainted their own word. And like whenever somebody lies to me now, whenever somebody gives me a big lie, they tell me a whopper of a lie. I have taken it upon myself that you just Israeled me.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying to people now. I want this to be a thing. You just Israeled me. And I go, what does that mean? You told a lie so convincingly, but you know it's a freaking lie.
Well, sometimes as well, people can say that, when someone's dependent on someone else, but still somehow is pushing them to doing things, that's what Israel does to America. So they might say, you Israeled me in that context as well. I think there's a lot of, or just, very outlandish, ridiculous lies and excuses. That's another very Israeli government Zionist behavior.
It is. Hitler once said, the bigger the lie, the more people will believe it.
So that statement makes a lot of sense. But the thing about lies is that you can fool all of the people part of the time. You can fool some people all the time, but you can't fool all the people
all the time. That's right.
And that's the problem that Israel's running into.
Who said that? I've heard that quote before. I just can't remember who the one that said that. See, and I also think it's very convenient in the choice of letters they used to spell Israel, because if you take out the E, you need LIARS to spell Israel.
Ah.
The E is for enough is enough of your bullshit. We've got enough. So Israel tainted themselves. They made themselves be hated by the world.
They didn't just do it by themselves. They had a lot of lobbying groups in America that helped them do it.
AIPAC.
And I think that, I've read that a lot of Israeli generals and politicians feel that American, supporters of Israel encouraged their worst instincts and have led to the country to be as, horrible, and, their government is basically demented and evil as it is today.
Of course. How else can you explain? Which other country helps their people from other countries that they don't even live in Israel? You got Jewish people / Zionist people or Zionist people parading around as Jewish people who are committing atrocities. They are many of them have been picked up for sexual abuse, pedophilia, all this kind of stuff. They make one call, and they get we'll help you out. We'll pay for your ticket to come here to escape prosecution. They fly them to Israel. Give them their citizenship, help them with the home.
Is that the Israeli government uses that for diplomatic leverage. They used it to pressure the Australian government, like they did to that teacher from Melbourne. I forgot her name.
I read about her.
Who abused Jewish Australian girls.
That's right.
And then Israel used her extradition to pressure the Australian government. They did similar things to Mexico. But a lot of people that, go to Israel, that get sent there, that get to make Aliyah, their connection to being Jewish is quite questionable. You got, people from Myanmar and Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Or maybe not Bangladesh, but Myanmar. You got Native Americans from Peru. You got people from Zimbabwe.
But
And
you do realize because these are people of color, even if they become Jewish, Israel doesn't accept them because Israel upholds the white supremacy. They only want to look after Israeli people or Jewish people that share their skin color. Like an Indian Jew was, he made a video. He was in Tel Aviv. I'm here in my homeland. I'm all that kind of. He's Indian, and he's saying I'm here in my homeland. And he wanted to enter a place like a club or something, and the Israelis wouldn't let him in. And he said, "But dude, I am Jewish. I am here to visit my homeland. We're not letting you in. You can't come in." You know, they knew that he was. I don't know if they believed him or not, if he was Jewish, but obviously he was very convincing. He had the Star of David on. You know, he was carrying the Torah. He was like, yay! And they still wouldn't let him in. Now, this is a huge lesson for this guy. I don't even know if he learned it, but if somebody like you that looks like them, you can pass for an Israeli. I can pass for an Israeli. I really can.
perish the thought.
Perish the thought, but you can pass for an Israeli. You will be entered in as opposed to an Indian or a Zimbabwe or somebody from Peru who converted to Judaism that wants to visit the homeland, so-called homeland.
All of that is true, but all those people will still get more rights, respect, dignity than any Palestinian would.
Oh, of course. No, that goes without saying. But they're getting the Palestinian treatment, but without the abuse, violence, and rape. But you're not allowed to enter. You're not allowed. You can't pass this point. You know what I mean? Palestinians can't pass many points, but
in the West Bank with apartheid.
You know what I
mean? Even the ones who are Israeli citizens are routinely discriminated against,
and they have no rights. They don't have any rights. They have minimal.
They have minimal.
Minimal rights,
unlike the Palestinians who aren't.
Yeah, exactly right. Anyway, just getting back to the whole Trump betraying Netanyahu thing.
Do you believe it?
No. I think this is performative. I think Netanyahu and Trump are in cahoots. I think, but this is just my paranoia, maybe. I don't know, because I refuse to believe that after 76 years, USA will say, you know what? I think we've been wrong. I think they're not as much of an ally as they are a burden. You know?
Well, look, the counter argument to that is, look, we've discussed in previous episodes how America wants to focus more on Asia, less in the Middle East and Europe. That's why they're, also sort of trying to cut deals in Ukraine. But the argument is that Israel is once again, but this time perhaps even potentially even worse, threatening America's fiscal stability and investment, and that American capital and American big businesses prefer to work with the Gulf states and with Saudi Arabia, and that they view Israel as something that sort of gets in the way of this unless they can impose an Abraham Accords infrastructure. I mean, apparently they even consider them more important than Europe, but regardless, money comes first, and contrary to what some people think, it's not necessarily Israel that has all of it. It's a lot of these Gulf states, but are they?
But Israel gets enough. It gets more than enough. It gets more than many of the Gulf countries.
Yeah, but they get it as welfare. They don't make it themselves.
No, of course not. No, they don't make it themselves. But do you believe this is convincing? Do you believe it is genuine by Trump, or do you think it's also part of an elaborate plan?
I think it is a bit played up, but I think it's maybe an attempt to discipline Israel a little bit, not in any way that it actually should be, but more so in making sure that it doesn't disrupt Trump's agenda.
Like a parent disciplining the child. That's a bad Israel. That's a very bad Israel.
But with love nonetheless.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the deal that Trump has been making, because he wanted Saudi to recognize Israel. Now they said, if you make a deal with me, you don't have to recognize Israel anymore. And which is very, I don't know. It sounds like a child say, if you give me this cookie, then I'll be your friend. It's like that kind of attitude, that kind of mentality of negotiating.
I think America has less leverage than it used to. It's been weakened by Trump and also by Biden, and Saudi Arabia has other options.
Mm.
Not that Saudi Arabia is a country in a perfect position either.
I don't think I personally don't believe Saudi is any better than Israel at this point. I believe they are the same side. They are the two sides of the same coin at this point. They do have some compassion, I would say, for their fellow brothers and sisters, but they could have done a lot more. They could have been more influential against the fight with Israel if they wanted to, but I feel that they choose not to. Like, as well as many other Arab leaders who have accepted peace treaties with Israel, who's making peace with one side but murdering another side. You know what I mean? Either murder us all or make peace with us all.
Well, they're undermining faith in Arab unity and Arab identity in general.
They've divided and conquered easily. They've done that already.
And maybe there'll be another Arab Spring, but from the most privileged people in the Middle East, in the Arabian Peninsula, in the Gulf, I doubt it. I think that they've, damaged the Arab political project, and maybe they've replaced it with some sort of Islamic one, but we'll see where that goes. That could go in any direction.
Well, at least Trump was successful in freeing one US/Israeli soldier, a man named Idan Alexander, who is from New Jersey, of all places, from New Jersey, who flew to Israel to join the IDF, got captured, and then how many days in captivity? I think 50 plus days in captivity till he finally got released. What do you think was going on through Netanyahu's mind when Trump made a deal to free? He made a deal with Hamas, not directly with Hamas, with somebody else who dealt with Hamas, to release one of their soldiers, that and without involving Israel at all in doing it.
Well, I think it goes to show that, first of all, America takes the hostages more seriously than Israel does. You think that
naturally,
Israel would be the one that focuses on this, and America would be pushing them. But in this instance, no. Israel neglects its own people, and it doesn't care about its own population that much.
And they've said it publicly too. They've actually said that publicly. And they even said that even if we got all the hostages back, the war is not going to stop. Our goal to get rid of all Palestinians is not going to stop.
But let's not pretend America does heaps either. I think that they just it was getting ridiculous for them, and it was embarrassing that America had to keep following Israel's insane strategies. Maybe for Netanyahu, they're rational in his mind, but not so much for America, and not so much for even the Israeli military.
USA is obviously doing something called damage control. They want to alleviate a little bit of the heat that's on them, just to show the world that they do have a compassionate side. They do have a moral side.
I don't think so. I think they're just trying to show that America is strong, and that they're not following Israel.
You think it's like a pissing contest between the two of them right now?
In some ways, but they have been portrayed as being in the subordinate position to this essentially sovereign military base of a country, and Americans and America itself has realized that that's not a good look. Now, what that will really change in the long term is hard to say, but it seems to be, things seem to be pointing in the direction that, Netanyahu and Israel might not get as many concessions as they wanted to before. And at the very least, that while America does seem to be still very committed to Zionism in Israel, how much they're committed, or how much the Trump administration is committed to Netanyahu and his, leadership and preserving him and keeping him out of jail is a lot more grey, and it's not as clear as it was before. It looks like Biden was willing to do whatever it took, but Trump maybe not as much. I mean, we heard that, you're right. People are right to be skeptical. We heard people talking about how Biden was admonishing Netanyahu, and he was sick of Netanyahu, and he was telling him to stop and to slow down, and that all turned out to be lies. And,
With the pictures of the decapitated babies that he said he saw. That was
Among
also,
other things, it
yeah.
also came out that the Israelis felt minimal pressure from him and from his democratic government, and even people like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they were either tricked or they lied to us about the efforts that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were doing, and this is why a lot of people turned on them.
Well, people are turning on themselves right now. They're regretting having supported the genocide, saying that Israel has the right to defend itself. Because now, 18 or 19 months into it, there have been certain Western journalism that are saying, I think now it's time for a ceasefire. I think now it's time to speak up. Now? You waited 18, 19 months to say this now?
It's
I mean, we've
the
been saying this after the first week that it happened, and it took you that long, and that many people had to die for you to come to that conclusion now. It's as if they are predicting that the ones they were supporting have lost so much credibility, they have lost so much support, and it's like they're changing sides to the winning side. It's like watching a football game. You're rooting for one team who's kicking ass. Halfway through the game, they're starting to lose, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to go on the other side now. I want to go on the other team.
It's like the Iraq War all over again. But at the end of the day, until they face accountability for this and for the Iraq War, then I'm not too sure we'll see that much change. Maybe there are. Maybe because people are turning away from mainstream media, legacy media, and traditional sources of media, that their funding models and their power and their influence and their captivity of the public's imagination is fading, is weakening. I mean, we saw Murdoch wasn't able to control the Australian election result the way he wanted to in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But, that doesn't mean that new actors and new, elements from within the media class won't continue to make that transition smoothly.
I see. No, it won't be smoothly. But I feel the fall of Israel may have begun in some form. I think the fall of them may have begun. We have had so many, not only journalists, brave journalists. We have had so many celebrities speaking out. More and more now are coming out. In the beginning, if one celebrity came out, they would have been shunned. They would have been discredited. They would have been kicked out of Hollywood. All that kind of stuff, And it's still kind of happening today. The new stars of the Scream movie, Jenna Ortega and that Melissa Barrera, I think her name is. They made a public statement about Palestine, and then they were no longer cast in the sequel for the movie Scream. But that didn't stop them. See, they're doing other movies, and Jenna Ortega signed another year to do that show Wednesday. Nothing. So but what I'm saying is the outcry, the defiance, the celebrities who are pointing out what they are doing is wrong and they're supporting Palestine, then they are getting stronger with every passing day.
That's the thing about workers' power. If it's one person, it's one fist, it's pretty easy to lower it. But when you get heaps and heaps of people, or even just a large minority, then they're going to go away with a lot more.
And Israel is not making it easy on them to be able. It's not making it harder on them to actually speak out, because we had the Cannes Film Festival recently, and this French actress who was also the head of the Cannes jury. Please, I don't know if I'm going to say her second name correctly. Juliette Binoche, I think. Binoche is, I think, her second name. She paid tribute to a Palestinian photojournalist named Fatma Husuna at the opening ceremony. And 10 of her relatives also died in the Israeli strike, all because her film entitled Put Your Soul on Your Hand was accepted in the Cannes Film Festival. And days later, after Cannes accepted that film, she was killed in an Israeli airstrike with 10 of her relatives. Is that a coincidence? Do you think they deliberately targeted her?
Yeah, I think that's quite likely.
Obviously, they got her because she was a Palestinian photojournalist, a Palestinian filmmaker. They kidnapped the other Palestinian filmmaker from the movie No Other Land, after they won the Oscar. He was kidnapped. They didn't kill him though, but he was kidnapped and then
He
released.
was in the West Bank, so
Yeah.
the Israelis don't always want to do the paperwork required to kill people there, which they don't have in Gaza.
But don't you think that Israel would understand that by doing something like this, to kill an important figure who made an important film that was accepted at a very well-known film festival, don't you think that the murder of that will just make that documentary go even? It's going to be seen by even more people.
Yeah,
You know
I mean,
that Palestine will get more support.
maybe their twisted logic was they didn't want to make another one.
Maybe they're putting the fear. Don't make any more movies about telling the truth, exposing us. Otherwise, the same thing will happen to you. We'll bomb you too.
It's to intimidate people and to scare them.
You know what? We're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. Whether we're gonna get killed or die from a ham sandwich, we're all going to fucking die. At least die for something that's worthy. You know, if I was to make a film that was gonna piss them off and expose them, and I get more followers, and it will cost me my life to get those more followers, then my life doesn't seem that important now, does it? I wouldn't mind sacrificing it. I wouldn't mind doing it if I could do something as wonderful as Fatma Hasuna has done, something as wonderful as the people who made No Other Land. You know, these are important. There's oh God, I wish I knew his name. There was a British journalist, worked for the BBC. He's been making documentaries about settlers in Israel.
Louis Theroux?
That's the one. Thank you. Somebody as courageous as him, but nothing bad's happening to him. Maybe because he's a white journalist. Who knows? You know.
Because of the color of his passport.
Maybe. But the thing is, he's more influential because he is white. He's got access to the BBC. He's got more access to media. These people that made these films had to work their asses off to have this film seen by people who are in that man's position. You know what I mean? Yeah. This man's got direct access. We will listen to him because of what he is doing. These people had to scream for us to get their attention, to get our attention.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but this is happening constantly. Ben Cohen from Ben and Jerry, you know Ben and Jerry, the ice cream.
Yeah.
You know, he confronted RFK Jr. and Congress less than a week ago, saying and chanting, "Killing children in Gaza. You are killing children. No, sorry, Congress is killing children in Gaza, and you're paying for it by kicking out the kids of America out of Medicaid."
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and they hauled him out of Congress. They arrested him. They put cuffs on him. And there was a photojournalist there goes, "Why are you being handcuffed? What's going on?" And he's saying the same thing. They are killing people in Gaza, and they're using the money that they use for children for Medicaid here in the U.S. They're killing kids in the U.S. by cutting off their Medicaid, and they're using that money to kill kids in Gaza.
Yeah, well,
kid for kid.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing, right? You have a like a Jewish businessman standing up for Palestinians, and then you have so-called anti-establishment people like Robert Kennedy and Trump, and so-called proud Christians, and even some proud Muslims, as you're talking about in Saudi Arabia, who do dick all to help.
See, Ben Cohen is the perfect example that separates what it means to be Jewish than what it means to be an Israeli. See, a lot of people believe that these two are one and the same. There's a clear difference. And I believe RFK Jr., I believe his father, Robert Kennedy, and his uncle, John Kennedy, they used to call him Jack as well, they're rolling in their graves what their nephew/son is doing. He is doing exactly the opposite of what his father and his uncle were doing.
Was his father and his uncle really doing that much?
They were. One of the last speeches, he made a few speeches, but one of the last speeches that JF Kennedy made was talking about those secret societies that really run the government. He didn't mention them by name, but we all knew exactly what he was talking about.
But Robert Kennedy talks about all these people as well.
Are you talking about Robert Kennedy today or Robert Kennedy?
Even Robert Kennedy today, he talks about secret society sort of thing. Talks about NATO.
But he's already on. But he's already under their payroll. He can say whatever he wants. This is all performative.
How do you know that the other ones weren't?
Are you kidding me? One of the first things that JFK did when he became president, he appointed his brother as his attorney general.
Okay.
The first thing that his brother did in the White House, he fired everybody that were taking bribes. Everybody. That was one of the first things that he did. He fired everybody that took bribes in the White House. He wanted a clean Kennedy administration. They went after the mafia. You don't think if these people were bought that they would have some leniency in some of the things that they were trying to accomplish? They went after the mafia. One of the first things they did was they went after the mafia. They went after Jimmy Hoffa. They went after the families of the mafia.
Jimmy Hoffa was a
He
union guy. He was probably corrupt, but he didn't.
He was
own the
very
mafia.
corrupt, who had mob money. But the thing is, the point is, they said they were going to do what they said they were going to do, and they followed through and they did it. He wanted to withdraw out of Vietnam. That was another one.
But he also started it.
He did not start the Vietnam War.
Well, he escalated it. Who did start it?
The Vietnam War. The Vietnam. The talks of the Vietnam War came towards the end of the administration for Eisenhower, who was the president before Kennedy. They were already in talks about it. But the Kennedy, in his first year, was dealing with the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was dealing with the whole Bay of Pigs.
And that's something he launched as well.
Yeah, but he said that he was lied to by the information and intelligence that he got from the CIA. And the CIA was formed in, I think, a year before or a year after Israel's establishment. And the CIA was also part of the secret society he was talking about, and he wanted to end the era of the CIA. He didn't want a CIA. He didn't think they were necessary. This was also something that contributed to his murder, big time. He called out the Israelis. He even said he wanted a freer Palestine. He said that. You can find it in the quote. He wanted a freer Palestine. There were a million reasons to kill this man. But who do you know that can kill indiscriminately, cover it up, make a gigantic conspiracy, and not be held accountable or arrested or prosecuted? Who do you know? This investigation has been going on for decades, and people are still asking who killed Kennedy. We all know who did it. We all know the people that were involved. We don't know the identities of the shooters, obviously, which is something that I personally would like to know. But who orchestrated it, and why had there not been any arrests or any accountability? Who do you know that had the power to do that?
America.
And
you want me to say Israel?
It definitely so, because they were threatened by a Kennedy. I believe after Kennedy's assassination, every president that became president, I believe after their inauguration, they are taken to a secret room where they are shown the footage of that assassination, and then they see Kennedy's head getting blown off. Then they stop the tape and they ask the new president, "Do you have any questions?" I think Reagan was kind of steering U.S. back on track to a certain way.
Sometimes, but more of the times he wasn't.
Yeah,
more often he was making things worse.
You know what? At least he was honest about what it was that he was doing. He wasn't trying to hide anything. He wasn't trying to cover up anything. You know, if he did something or said something, he would admit it. He wouldn't shy about it. He wouldn't lie about it. He wouldn't try to cover it up. You know,
he did a lot of cover-ups as well.
You reckon?
Yeah, like Iran-Contra.
What I mean is like what he was to his people, like when he was addressed in Congress, when he was addressed in press conferences.
Well, he's just better than the standards we have now because they're so low.
Yeah.
In terms of, being able to communicate.
Yeah. Getting back to what I like to call the fall of Israel, with all these people speaking out. We even had this woman, Miss Rachel. You've heard of Miss Rachel? Yeah. She has a show catered to children, who said in one of her episodes, "I care about all children, including the children in Gaza." And after making that statement, they've been trying to destroy her credibility, which is ridiculous, because they're basically saying, it's okay if you care for kids over here, but please don't care for the kids over here, because if you care for these kids, that makes you an anti-Semite, or what have you. And now this woman's gotten many controversies. She's now being extra famous. I never would have heard of Miss Rachel if it wasn't for that statement. And she was on an interview with Mehdi Hassan to clarify exactly what she was saying. And one of the things she said, one of the things that Mehdi Hassan asked her was, has anybody said to you, don't do it, don't say it, it's not worth it, take care of your career, you know? And she said, yes, but I think those who are staying silent are more controversial than those who are speaking out, which is a very, very interesting factor, I believe. And one of the quotes she said was, she made a quote on her Instagram that said, "Don't be racist and anti-Palestine. Be brave. Be brave in speaking out. There's nothing wrong with it. There should be the thing is there should be nothing wrong with it. The fact that people are making, or the people in power, they are making this wrong, or calling it anti-Semitic, or throwing all this negative press at it. It's like a child or anybody should say, "I feel sorry for these kids that are getting bombed." There should be nothing wrong with saying that. But because these are Palestinian kids that are getting bombed, then there's something wrong. If a child or somebody else would say, "I feel sorry for these Swedish kids getting bombed," then the whole world would agree. But saying I feel horrible and sad for these Palestinian children getting bombed and starved, now they're using starvation, then all of a sudden it's controversial. Why is that?
Look, we know that the world's run by hypocrites, but I think it's also people should be aware that someone who doesn't care about the children in Palestine is not going to care about your children. Someone who doesn't care about the nature in Palestine isn't going to care about your local environment. Someone who doesn't care about those people won't care about you, whether it's a politician, a business person, even just a normal person that you know. So, look, when the Israeli lobby and Zionist activists and figures in politics tell people not to care about the children in Gaza, they're normalizing not caring about children.
And
They're
that is what is very
normalising
wrong.
Not caring about human life, even about history, about architecture, about structures, about even about nature too.
But can people see the problem in that? Can they see that there's something seriously wrong in this scenario?
I think a lot of people do.
And I think this is why a lot more people are waking up. But the thing is, people are not supposed to be afraid to say anything. Now, fear is in everybody's heart. Even recently, there was a student in NYU who graduated. I don't know what he graduated in, but he was giving a graduation speech. And in his speech, he was condemning the genocide, talking about U.S. was complicit in Israel's genocide. And after making that speech, even though he passed his degree and he paid his tuition, the New York University are refusing now to give him his degree. All for what? For speaking what's in his heart, for speaking that something that is affecting him in some way, that's affecting all of us in some way. And when he was giving the speech, you can hear the fear in his voice. Because everyone's saying that I shouldn't have done this, but I can't help but to do this. Fear is what drives people to be courageous, to stand up to a tyranny. It's fear that gives us that motivation to do so. Because we've got one of two choices. We can let the fear consume us and keep us silent. Okay, leave me alone. I won't say nothing. Just don't do this to me anymore. Or, you know what? Fuck it. I'm terrible. I'm terrified. I'm going to take this. They're going to shun me anyway. I might as well be shunned standing up. Well, with some sense of pride and dignity.
That's the definition of bravery, though, isn't it? It's not
courage.
Having no fear,
courage.
it's confronting it.
Courage is doing what's right in the presence of fear. You can't be afraid to be afraid. In other words, I think but all the people that have done things like that have left footprints in history. And I don't think, and these people that left footprints in history, they are examples for us on how we should live our lives today and how we should live in the future. You don't think Gandhi was terrified in South Africa with the injustice that he faced there when he was visiting?
Yeah.
It was a horrible injustice that only certain people needed ID cards, whereas everybody else didn't. And he fought for that. And he fought hard. He got beaten for that. And he did the same thing in India when the British were there. And he said, they can break my body, they can beat me and kill me, and they'll have my body, but they will not have my obedience. Because the UK the British were trying to keep India under their thumb. The UK were like 100,000 in a country that had tens of millions that they were trying to keep under control.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what happened? What happened? Gandhi fought and he protested with fasting. But what happened? The British left. He beat the British. People became on his side because he was standing for a righteous cause. The same cause that everybody was saying, don't you dare. Don't you dare. They're going to murder us. They're going to kill us. They're going to bomb us. They're going to discredit us. They're going to taint us. They're going to ruin us. But that didn't matter to him. What mattered to him was his own people. They had the right to live their life the way they are supposed to live, not to be controlled, not to be occupied.
Yeah.
Same thing is happening today. And people are saying, don't speak out. Don't talk out. I got told by my own members of my own family, imagine, what the fuck are you doing with these podcasts, man? No wonder you can't get a job. Well, the thing is, I couldn't get a job even before I did all this Palestinian stuff. All right, which is why I went to the Gulf country. I worked for 16 years there. I got opportunities that they wouldn't give me here. Now that I'm back here, I got offered a job. I don't know if I told you this story.
Go on.
I got offered a job because I was looking for a photographer to do a family portrait while my brother was visiting. And when they found out that I was a filmmaker, we want to offer you a job. They even sent me a contract. And when they asked me to send them a show reel, I sent them my show reel. Now I have almost 1,000 videos on my show reel, and 5 or 6 of those videos are these podcasts. They focus on the podcast. Once they saw the pro-Palestinian part, they sent me an email. They didn't call me. They sent me an email, and I quote, "We cannot hire you because you are a Palestinian supporter." Their words. "We cannot hire you because you are a Palestinian supporter." What if I was a Muslim and they said, "We cannot hire you because you are a Muslim"? Or "We cannot hire you because we found out you are a homosexual"? Or does that take away my competence in doing the job? Do you know what I'm saying here?
Oh, no, I know. Exactly.
This is so, basically I canceled myself. I totally fucked myself. But I don't feel bad about it. I don't want to be a slave to this establishment. I don't want to have to be silenced in order to make money, or somebody takes something away from me. Don't do this anymore. Play our game, but neglect who you are and what you are. I can't do that. I cannot do that. After all this has been happening, all the footage that we've been seeing, all the stories that we've been hearing, it changes people. It does change. Well, it changed me. I can't speak for all people, but it changes people. I can't live my life the way I used to live before all of this happened. I can still go out, but I won't be able to have as good of a time as I used to. The last 2 years, I did not celebrate my birthday. What the fuck is there to celebrate?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What am I celebrating? I'm celebrating another year of life, and I'm grateful that I got another year of life, right? As opposed to most babies in Palestine who don't even see their first birthday. I'm grateful for that, but there's nothing to celebrate.
Yeah.
I can't enjoy it.
Especially when you know that something can be done about it. It's not some sort of natural disaster. It's not some sort of, overly complex structural thing that is hard to fix. No, it's not. But look, if countries like Australia and America, never forget America, but countries like Australia and New Zealand and Europe, they think that, they can sort of discriminate on this basis, and then they can exclude whatever percentage of their population that actually cares about this and still be thriving in functional societies. Well, they're wrong. They're wrong. And, when you see large percentages of people in lots of places saying, no, I will not accept, what's being done to the Palestinian people, if they're being shunted out of their, careers, their jobs and their futures, especially to young people, then who's going to take their place? Is it going to be people that just don't care, people that are psychos, maybe people that are very Machiavellian, that sort of care on a good day and not on a bad day?
Yeah.
Like the Labour Party.
Yeah. So, continue.
But also, where does that put us, in competition with other nations that, other nations might, look, let's face it, Russia and China do stop people that will confront their regime from having, important positions, but they don't stop people who, are against the essentially the Holocaust that's been done to the Palestinian people. Maybe they tell them that it's, they direct them to do it in other ways, but they don't fully go and say, "Oh, you support Palestine, you're this, you're that," and it's such a low standard.
It is something that shouldn't be. Everyone has the right to express what they are feeling, and in any way, in any form. Like we have, like my right is I can express what I'm feeling and what I like to talk about in this podcast, for example. A film that I'm trying to get made. There's a film that I've been trying to get made for the last 3 months, and I'm not going to give away the details of how the film, what the story is, but it's about the importance of boycotting certain products that represent the country that commits atrocities. When actors that I'm trying to cast, when they find out about this, their initial reaction is, if my boss sees me in a film like this, I'll get fired. If I am in this, I can get in trouble. I might not get another acting job. This should not be. This should not be a situation, an issue, an option at all. This is a film, an artistic made film with a very important message, and people are afraid of this message. The message is of peace. The message is of, stop funding a country that's using that money to murder. That's the message.
What else will people compromise? You compromise on Palestine, then you compromise on your right to get paid well, and you compromise on the right to not be, have II replace you. This is how the ruling class controls people, and makes things worse for everyone. Darkens the future. Sometimes you got to just stand up, because if people don't stand up for justice and solidarity in Palestine, then who will stand up for them? If Canada doesn't stand up to say, what Israel's doing is wrong, then who's going to really give a shit if Trump invades them?
No, of course. But the thing is, I personally believe they all know it's wrong. They're just not allowed to say it. They just can't make a public statement. I believe in their heart and in their minds what's going on is wrong. I mean, anybody who's a human being can see what is happening is wrong. 18, 19 months, almost more than 300,000 people have been killed. This is wrong. Like the Iraqi war, everybody knew it was wrong. The Americans fucking knew it was wrong. You had all these Americans protesting.
But they also knew it was profitable.
The people didn't care. The government does. The people couldn't care. How many families, American families' lives were ruined for their children that went to that war and died needlessly, unnecessarily.
All for people to forget that they became a democracy.
You know what I'm saying? Right? The thing is, people identify what is just and what is not. They know. I think many of us are just born with that instinct to know right from wrong. Yeah, and this is clearly wrong, and we should not be shunned or discredited or miss opportunities to point that out. We should not. Like I should be able to wear this T-shirt, and I do, but I should be able to wear this T-shirt in public and not be called anything else but somebody who's supporting this. This does not. I'm not representing that. That I think that death should come to every Israeli for wearing this T-shirt. You know what I'm saying? Because a hypocrite or a racist would say, "Hey, you're anti-Semitic for wearing that T-shirt." How? Did I put a Nazi sign on the Israeli flag?
Well, I think it's also just a manipulation of the media. And look, we all know people with, weak minds or with problems, or just sometimes things don't cut it for them. Like, not everyone's capable of analyzing things properly. So when the media shoves things into people like that, they if they don't have self-control and they don't know better, that's how they react.
But they have to understand that the more they shove this in us, right, it's giving us a larger platform to fight back. You've had, like I said, all these celebrities that are coming out. Macklemore, who came out with that song about Hind, who got shot. It blew up. It made everybody blow up. It made more musical artists do the same thing, and all these other artists are supporting each other now. I stand with this person for standing against Israel,
and that's how you win.
This is why I believe that the fall of Israel I think, has finally begun. It's going to take years, maybe decades, but it's begun. The world's eyes have finally opened. We've been saying wake up for the last 19 months, and I think a good third of them have woken up, and they're waking up the others now. I honestly believe this is happening. I can see it every day. Streaming videos that I see all the time on the internet, on Instagram, on YouTube. I'm seeing it every single day. People from all over the world, names of celebrities who I never heard of, who have made this statement now. What was that band, the Irish band Kneecap?
The rappers.
The rappers. All right, they made a statement and blew up. And what did they do? They canceled their tour. So what did the Kneecap do? They gave a free concert in return.
Yeah.
They're trying to hurt them by destroying them financially. Now I'm not going to make it. Now I'm not going to allow you to make money. Do you think these people care about money?
No. Well,
they made their money.
Look at the context of Kneecap. These are people that, in some ways, know what it's like to be treated like Palestinians in Northern Ireland. And there's a lot of people across the world, from Africa to Asia, even in some parts of Europe, that have felt that boot before. And a lot of people can relate, and a lot of people are rising up.
And that is a good thing, because I feel like the more they put obstacles in our way to stop us, the more we're gonna conquer them. The more the more they try to stop us, the more we are recruiting.
Yeah.
The more we are increasing in numbers in a massive way, and very quickly too. And I think this is terrifying them. I think maybe if this is not, if Trump and Netanyahu are not in cahoots, and Trump actually did this on his own accord, he feels that he's the right thing to do by ignoring Netanyahu at this point, then you know what? I think America is finally, after so many decades, are heading in the right direction.
I think that's just wishful thinking.
It is. But you know what? Everything starts with a wish, man. Everything starts with a dream. Everything starts with a vision. Didn't the people of South Africa wished for the apartheid to be over? And it was over?
But you can't rely on the oppressive.
No. But what I'm saying is, all right, even though if it is wishful thinking, I believe things start this way. Things starts with a dream. Things starts with a wish. I'm not saying this can't be impossible. It can be possible.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think it's impossible to expect it to come from America.
It is. That's why I believe that too. When I read about this, I was like, nah, something's going on here. I don't believe it. I even made a statement. Saying, I feel this is all performative. Trump will be back on his knees for Israel in no time. Like all the other presidents were. But if there's a slight percentage, a small percentage that actually Trump did this out of his own consciousness, his own thinking, without anybody telling him what he should do, because he has to answer the Congress, he has to answer the people. He's not, and he has advisors that tell him you should do this or don't do this or you should do that. But at the end, he's making that decision himself. If he made that decision, to abandon Israel and calling them a burden more than they are an ally at this point, what other U.S. president in recent memory has said that publicly? No one. They may have said things like, Israel should take it a little easier, what they're doing is a little extreme, but we are still behind them. You know what I mean? He basically called them out by ignoring them and making that statement. They are more of a burden than they are of an ally. That no U.S. president has said that I can think of to them. So this is a step in the right direction, and I hope he continues that. I think this is the only noble thing that Trump has done so far in his presidency.
True, but he just says anything. And no other.
That's the scary part.
No other president.
That's the scary part. It's like he's got Tourette's syndrome. He will say one thing and he can say the opposite thing in the same hour. He is very unpredictable with what's going to come out of him. But what's not predictable is we know that he's going to make an ass out of himself one way or the other.
Yeah.
But if he's going to make an ass out of himself, he might as well take Israel down with him while he's making an ass out of himself. At least he can discredit them in some way. Because even with that statement, can affect the American people to say, you know what, maybe he's right. Maybe he is right. if our president said this, it's got to be right, because a lot of Americans still believe, in that way of thinking. He's my president. Whatever he tells me, I know it's the right thing. Whereas other people are saying, "He's my president. I'm ashamed to be an American." But how many people did technically vote for him? Apparently, the majority of the U.S. did. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become president.
I think it was the majority relative to the other candidate.
Either way, you've got so many Trump supporters, man. That are, that you've got so many of them speaking out. This is my president. He can be a dictator and it'll be okay. They're just defending him at every turn. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, that does make him unique in that he's one of the few people that doesn't fear backlash.
No, of course not.
At least not very easily.
The man's got no shame.
And he's got supporters that will go with whatever he says.
Yeah.
But, the chances of that being turned to good are not very high.
They're not high. Like you said, it is wishful thinking. And we want to I personally would like to hold on to that, because I'm hoping that can turn into something. Because I feel that statement alone would have caused a reverberation to a whole new generation of Americans that will have power in their future to do something about this, to either choose to fight against the Israeli policy or to fight with them, to be on their side. I think this statement alone has changed a lot of things. I honestly believe it, because, like I said, no U.S. president has had the audacity to make a statement like that about Israel, and then Israel turns around and says, we don't depend on U.S. to do whatever it is that we want to do. We are not dependent on them, which you clearly are. But it made them make that statement, which is a total and utter lie. They are panicking. I feel that Israel right now is panicking. And
Israel or just Netanyahu?
Well, Netanyahu represents all of Israel. And even though we have seen some Israeli protesters, don't forget, many Israeli people, both citizens and soldiers, have boasted and bragged and celebrated killing Palestinian people.
No, that's true. I'm not going to pretend that.
So when Netanyahu wants to continue killing them, he's got major support.
But they've got other reasons that they don't like him.
Most of those reasons are because he refuses to make deals to get the hostages back.
Yeah, and for corruption and general issues.
What government is not in some way corrupt?
It was under him that this all happened.
This was what's happening was inevitable. It was going to happen. If it wasn't under Netanyahu's rule, it was going to be under another prime minister's rule.
Yeah, but that's not something that Israelis really want to admit to themselves.
No, of course not. Nobody wants to admit to their crime that they are guilty of.
Hence that I'm differentiating from him, and from the Israeli government, not in terms of, one's bad, one's good, or anything ridiculous like that, but in terms of what exactly is their interest and their outcome, both, in the war and in negotiations with Trump and with the Arab states.
Well, yeah.
Because Netanyahu will die one day, and the Israelis don't want that to happen to their countries.
Well, but we don't want him to die as of yet. We want him to be imprisoned for life.
I meant like as a
I get you.
Structure.
Well, his request for the ICC to withdraw or to postpone the arrest didn't work out. The ICJ are still wanting to arrest this man. They still have the warrant on him, which is why I'm saying he's panicking. He is panicking big time, and who knows what the future is going to be when he's gone? Because eventually he is going to go. Whether he natural causes or he does get captured, the future for Israel is always going to be tainted by its past.
I don't think he's panicking. I think he's working, and
he's working to get out of trouble. He's working to get out of his crimes. He's working to get out of jail to avoid it. But there are people on the other side that are working just as hard as him to put him in there.
Yeah,
and he's been banned now to visit several countries now. But
I think what really risks him isn't necessarily just the people that are working against him, but the people that are keeping him up if they get sick of him.
I concur. I don't think anybody finds Netanyahu useful, and I do believe that the day of him to face justice is inevitable. I think it will happen one way or the other. And that's where we're going to leave it for today. I want to thank my guest, Mr. Stasi. Again, happy birthday. Thanks for joining us in this episode of The Magic Hour. Don't forget, I'm your host, Majid and Dairy, aka Magic Leb. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Majid and Dairy or on my Instagram and on my Instagram at Fame Film Agency. Until next time, guys, take care. And as always, free Palestine.
Peace.